For sure. So I just have two questions because earlier you mentioned you've been working on this record for 5 years. So the first one is because you have been working on this record for the past 5 years, is there any kind of pressure that you've put on yourself because your listeners have been waiting for this record and you've been holding on to these songs for so long that like are you a little scared to let them go?
I'm not scared to let them go as much as
Mhm.
I am curious to how they will be received.
Yeah.
Because while how do I put this?
Mhm.
While we are the same band at the core, we have, and I hate this term when it comes to records, but
Mhm.
we are more mature. Like we are literally 5 years older than we were. No, actually older because Wilt came out 5 years ago. We
Yeah.
tracked it probably 6 years ago. So we're six
Yeah.
years older than when that record came out. We have different tastes. What's trendy and like what's relevant and what's hitting our ears constantly has changed. So that's definitely put an influence on the record. Um, and I guess you could argue in that time, like we wrote enough songs to where there could be a whole nother record in between. So when I say it took 5 years to put together the record, there is a song that was written 5 years ago, and there is a song that was written a year ago, and they
Mhm.
are both in the same place.
Mhm.
So I think it does. Uh, I don't think anything is to be desired from someone who loves Wilt and has been a fan of the band for a long time. But we push the envelope a little bit more. We're experimenting with vocal layers and synthesizers. And Sean comes from a more post-hardcore background, so there's some heavier elements to it in places, some more alternative elements to it in places.
Mhm.
And I'm curious to see how our audience has grown with us. And I know that there's going to be something on there for everyone,
Yeah.
but I think there are some surprise tracks. And have you guys listened all the way through to everything?
Mhm.
Yep.
So slow motion is like way out of left field for what we usually do. Kayfabe is way out of left field. Really, the whole back half of the record is us pushing the envelope for
Mhm.
what we think Hungover could be, and the first half of the record is kind of like hey, like here's an evolved version of what we were doing before.
Gotcha.
So I think as people listen into it, like maybe in that 37 minutes or however long the record is, they'll kind of see the growth and hear the growth. And I think we've structured it that way.
For sure.
Um, but who knows? I'm very curious to see what people think and talk about it and see if people have questions and to explain those questions and I don't know. Like I'm excited for it to not be mine anymore, for it to not be ours, for people to uh come up with their own interpretations of things. And uh I've historically written in a way that's very specific to me and tells my story. But
Mhm.
I think as I've grown as a songwriter, I'm more capable of putting lyrics together in such a way that maybe more people can relate to what I'm saying and apply it to their situations.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. I'm just curious and excited and like what people have said so far has been really cool.
Mhm.
Um and I don't know, I'm just excited to hear more of that. So far the reception is good. So I'm it makes me feel better about it. Like it makes me feel not scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like it's unknown and that's fucking cool. Like
Yeah.
it's like it's an adventure, you know?
For sure.
Absolutely.
And then my second question was because you said you only write in the studio together as a band, do you guys just do it in very, very short bursts, or is there kind of a moment where you're like, let's all get in the studio, we're gonna write a full album?
So so we started writing the record maybe 6 months, no, a year before the pandemic started is
Oh
when we really
shit.
started getting into the studio.
Okay.
So like 2019, we were in the studio working on this.
Hmm.
And at that point, nothing was separating us, so we were getting together pretty often, and
Hmm.
we banged out probably like 7 or 8 demos. But also around that time, I found out that I was going to be having a daughter, so that
Oh my
changed a
God.
lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that changed a lot. I wasn't able to get into the studio as much. So there
Hmm.
would be times where I go and spend 3 days in Daytona and do as much as I can, but then maybe I don't go for 2 months. And the guys are going in there, and that format kind of worked out really well. because once the pandemic did start, my daughter was born. She was born a month before the pandemic.
Good.
I had a newborn at home, so I was being very careful about what I was doing because we didn't really know what we were dealing with.
Of course.
Um, and when we finally felt comfortable, the guys were kind of going in on their own individual one-on-one sessions. And thank goodness we had all these demos put together so we can kind of work off of the structure with the constant being the producer.
Mhm.
And we didn't do a session together until probably it had gotten cold outside and then warm again.
Oh
So
shit.
like we had gotten together like separately,
Mhm.
like maybe two of us or three or whatever, but not all of us.
Mhm.
So it was probably March by the time we got together again. And at that point, we had all kind of grown as individuals or whatever. We weren't really
Mhm.
sure if we were going to stay a band through all this because the world was so crazy. And it's like, I was thinking about playing shows when everything's a mystery, you know?